Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Together. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nasta Praishya Bhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Namashloke Bhakti Bhavati Nastiji. She's the very reason of complex. Rational, respectful basis on the personality of God and higher. Unto God and I, she is the supremacy to be. Unto others, Asvattama, the goddess of learning. Unto she who has asked thee on all. Let every attendance and classes and Bhagavata, let every service to the pure devotee. All that is troublesome in the heart is almost completely destroyed. The loving service of the personality of God, whose praise transcends songs, is established as a pure road. Would someone like to summarize what the last class was about?
Given beautifully by Rasika Prabhu, we talked about how the son of Dronacharya was basically his fate was being determined. And Arjuna was hearing different sides of opinions, one from Bhima and others of, oh, he should be killed, and others saying, no, save him, like the mother of Draupadi, the mother of the boys, with the argument of like, oh no, he has a mother, say, like, let him live. And Arjuna has this great just trouble, this difficulty of figuring out what do I do, and he's in stress and anxiety over this seemingly impossible decision, and Krishna all the while is there just kind of smirking and giggling and has this giddiness to him, because he ultimately wants Arjuna to realize that the answer is only in me. There's no, where everything looks so complex around you on the dual plane, it's surrender unto me and your answer will come forth.
Yes, and added to that, Arjuna does take a decision, and he, cuts off Asvattama's hair and jewels, and then sends him away. And then after that, the Pandavas and their relatives, they gather to grieve their lost relatives.
I just wanted to mention this because this is a phrase that's been in my mind for a while. I just want to say it. But it's like an unmovable object versus, or an unstoppable force versus an immovable object. Like there are different injunctions that were in the scriptures and different kinds of etiquette that would say that Asvattama should be killed or that he should be spared. So Arjuna was kind of in between an immovable object and an unstoppable force with the two things. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
We're at chapter 8, so we concluded the last chapter.
We're going to be reading verses 1 to 17. I'd like us to just take turns. So if you could just pass the mic, and if you're the next person talking, meaning like we only have like so it's mostly going to be this side, but I mean, just go like this, and then like let you start, and then let her speak, and then you start, and then let them speak, and then everybody continues.
Sutta Goswami said, thereafter, the Pandavas, desiring to deliver water to the dead relatives who had desired it, went to the Ganges with Draupadi. The ladies walked in front.
Highly limited over young and sufficiently operate transported, conveyed, and regarded, whose water is sanctified into being mixed with the dust of his feet of glory.
There sat the king of the Kurus, Maharaj Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers, and Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Kunti, and Draupadi, all overwhelmed with grief. Lord Krishna was also there.
Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and their reactions upon living beings, Lord Sri Krishna and the Manus began to pacify those who were shocked and affected.
The Munis. So it was not the Manus, it was the Munis.
The clever Duryodhana and his party cunningly usurped the kingdom of Yudhishthira, who had no enemy. By the grace of the Lord, the recovery was executed, and the unscrupulous kings who joined him with Duryodhana were killed by him. Others also died, their duration of life having decreased for their rough handling the hair.
Lord Sir Krishna caused 3 well-performed Asvattama horse sacrifices to be conducted by Maharaj Yudhishthira, and thus caused his virtuous fame to be glorified in all directions, like that of Indra, who had performed 100 such sacrifices.
Lord Sri Krishna then prepared for his departure. He invited the sons of Pandu, after having been worshipped by the Brahmanas, beheaded by Srila Vaisadeva. The Lord also reciprocated greetings.
Please all go ahead on your side. Bruce?
As soon as he seated himself in the chariot to start for Dwarka, he saw Uttara hurrying toward him.
Uttara said, O Lord of Lords, Lord of the universe, you are the greatest of all mystics. Please protect me. Protect me, for there is no one else who can save me from the clutches of death in this world of duality.
O my Lord, you are all-powerful. A fiery iron arrow is coming towards me fast. My Lord, let it burn me personally if you so desire, but please do not let it burn and abort my embryo. Please do me this favor, my Lord.
Sutta Goswami said, having patiently heard her words, Lord Sri Krishna, who is always very affectionate to his devotees, could at once understand that Asvattama, the son of Dranakarya, had thrown the Brahmastra to finish the last life in the Pandava family. Oh, foremost among the great thinkers, Manus, son, Kanav, seeing Munis, Shanaka. Oh, foremost amongst the great thinkers, Munis, Shanaka, seeing the glaring Brahmastra Proceeding towards them, the Pandavas took up their 5 respective weapons.
The almighty personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees, who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up his Sudarshan disc to protect them.
The Lord of supreme mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as the Paramatma. As such, just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy.
O Shaunaka, glory of Brigu's family, although the supreme Brahmastra weapon released by Asvattama was irresistible and without check or counteraction, it was neutralized and foiled when confronted by the strength of Vishnu, Lord Krishna.
O Brahmanas, do not think to be especially wonderful in the activities of the mysterious and infallible personality of Godhead. By his own transcendental energy, he creates, maintains, and annihilates all material things, although he himself is unborn.
Let's say from the radiation of the Brahmastra, Kunti, the chastity devotee of the Lord, and the 5 sons, Tripurari, address Lord Krishna as his very eternal.
Thank you. So what did we just read? We read that, okay, so Asvattama is gone, all the Pandavas and their relatives, they're grieving all the people who have lost their lives on the battle of Kurukshetra, because this battle was all conducted within the same family members. So everyone on both sides were related to each other in some type of way. And so now they're grieving the losses on both sides. And doing so, they go to the Ganges, the proper traditions and culture, Vedic culture, and afterwards, it so happens that Asvattama has fasted the Brahmastra oven again and directed at Uttara. So she's carrying Parikshit in her womb, and it's the last heir. So, he didn't have enough killing all the 5 children. Now he also wanted to kill the embryo so that they really don't have a chance to have progeny or an heir to the throne. And so she comes to Krishna and she begs him to save not herself but the embryo. Krishna does, because he takes care of the surrendered souls. And he goes actually in the womb as Paramatma and protects the embryo from the heat and extreme power of the Brahmastra weapon.
It felt like we covered a lot. And yeah, so many things that could be drawn out. But this text 5, it's like, yeah, real quick. And it just summarized like Drona, Yudhisthira usurped this kingdom and others died. And then it just really like move on. I don't know. It's very
Yeah, I thought people might have some questions about this one. It's not one of the verses that we're covering today, but this is part of the story of the Mahabharata. Can you go back to that one so that people can see it? Yeah. So it starts with how the Battle of Kurukshetra starts. So all the family on this side, Duryodhana, they want the kingdom from the Pandavas, from Yudhishthira, and so they do all these schemes to get it from them. And in one of those schemes, I forgot who is it, Asvattama? Shakuni, yeah. In one of these schemes, they're doing gambling. So gambling is something that they do in Kshatriya caste, and you're not allowed to. As a Kshatriya, you can't refuse a fight, including a gambling match. And so the Kuru side challenges the Pandavas, but they call in Shakuni, who's like a really tricky, like sneaky person, and he has tricked the dice. And anyway, basically they lose everything. They lose the kingdom, they lose their wealth, they lose their jewelry, like they lose everything. And at the end, like the only thing that's basically left is their wife. And so they do another game and they win by trick, and they take Draupadi. And that's the whole story, which we're not going to get in detail into, but it's the whole story of them trying to, how do you say, unrobe? Disrobe Draupadi in front of everybody. But then she surrenders to Krishna, and Krishna provides for her unlimited sari, so she's protected in that way. But they dragged her by the hair, in the middle of the assembly, and tried to disrobe her. So and she's a very chaste lady, so it's very, very disrespectful and terrible offense. So that's what this particular verse is talking about.
So Ashvatthama got completely shamed in our last reading, and now today he's coming back with another Brahmastra and trying to kill Parikshit. That's correct?
That is correct. He didn't learn his lesson. Yeah, that shows like the depth of his crookedness.
Is that
That's Draupadi, and Krishna is at the top providing side, so that she stays protected. So, anyways, like there's a lot of like details to that. There's a reason why nobody was able to stand up for her, and Krishna had to step in and everything. But it's just like not what we're going to talk about today. So he said, some say that the Kurus all lost because of this offense that they made to Draupadi. And actually, in the purport of that verse, it says that that's the reason why is it in the purport? Yeah, I think so. That's the reason why Duryodhana died, and whoever else like disrespected or they deserve to die as a result. So we're actually going to go to verse 4. Hata bandhum shucharpitam. Hata bandhum shucharpitam. Uteshu kalasya gatim. Uteshu kalasya gatim. Darshayana pratikriyam. Darshayana pratikriyam. Santvayama samunibhi. Hata bandhur sucharpitam. Uteshu kalasya gatim. Darshayana pratikriyam. Okay, we're gonna skip the word for word and just go to translation. And let's say it together. Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and the reactions of non-living beings, Lord Shri Krishna and the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected. Someone would like to read? Please.
The stringent laws of nature, under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot be altered by any living entity. The living entities are eternally under the subjugation of the Almighty Lord. The Lord makes all the laws and orders, and these laws and orders are generally called dharma or religion. No one can create any religious formula. Bona fide religion is to abide by the orders of the Lord. The Lord's orders are clearly declared in the Bhagavad Gita. Everyone should follow him only or his orders, and that will make all happy, both materially and spiritually. As long as we are in the material world, our duty is to follow the orders of the Lord. And if by the grace of the Lord we are liberated from the clutches of the material world, then on our liberated stage also we can render transcendental loving service unto the Lord. In our material stage, we can see neither ourselves nor the Lord for want of spiritual vision. But when we are liberated from material affection and are situated in our original spiritual form, we can see both ourselves and the Lord face to face. Mukti means to be reinstated in one's original spiritual status after giving up the material conception of life. Therefore, human life is specifically meant for qualifying ourselves for the spiritual liberty. Unfortunately, under the influence of illusory material energy, we accept this spot life of only a few years as our permanent existence and thus become illusioned by possessing so-called country, home, land, children, wife, community, wealth, etc., which are false representations created by Maya, illusion. And under the dictation of Maya, we fight with one another to protect these false possessions. By cultivating spiritual knowledge, we can realize that we have nothing to do with all this material paraphernalia. Then at once we become free from material attachment. This clearance of the misgivings of material existence at once takes place by association with the Lord's devotees, who are able to inject the transcendental sound into the depths of the bewildered heart, and thus make one practically liberated from all lamentation and illusion. That is a summary of the pacifying measures for those affected by the reaction of stringent material laws, exhibited in the forms of birth, death, old age, and disease, which are insoluble factors of material existence. The victims of war, namely the family members of the Kurus, were lamenting the problems of death, and the Lord pacified them on the basis of knowledge.
So this particular verse is about the loss of loved ones, the loss of relatives. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, the Pandavas and their relatives, they've lost like thousands of relatives just on the battle of Kurukshetra. And as I said there, like everyone is grieved, and Krishna is there wanting to pacify them. So I thought to share a little bit about the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a relative, because this is something that we've either already experienced or that we're bound to experience at some point in this life. And because we're reading this story, or we read stories like this of, grief and people losing their relatives, but like in the scriptures, I think that we don't relate to it that much because we're hearing it as a story, and we're hearing it as like, Krishna and his awesome like devotees like experiencing these things. And I think that we forget that this is like actual events that happened and that were felt and experienced by actual people. But it's hard to relate to because it seems a little bit mystical when we hear about it or we read about it from our scriptures. And so for the purpose of relating and understanding really what's happening, I thought of sharing a personal story. So this is for the purpose of understanding what is written in the purport here, losing a loved one and what that means on a material and a spiritual perspective. So it's a little vulnerable, but bear with me. I grew up with a lot of siblings that would come and go. And some of them stayed in my life for less than a year. Some of them stayed in my life for a few years. But 4 of them I shared at least one parent with, and they stayed in my life up till now. And out of all of them, only one of them I shared both parents with. And her name is Maya. And so I grew up with her. And Maya is a really, what at least was, a very interesting personality. When you think of Maya as the translation of illusion, I think she was personifying that in a really raw way. So we were always considered total opposites as children. So I grew up with her my whole life. She's the only sibling I grew up with her my whole life. And yeah, she grew up with a few different personality disorders, which made her extremely excited, uncontrollable, impossible to restrain, and very noisy. Like she was a chaotic one. And growing up into a teenager, that became even worse because, association and what the world is allowing us access to, and also just the perverted version of the world we live in at the moment. So she became entangled in all sorts of things. And by that, I mean drugs and alcohol and really toxic, abusive relationships. And she would miss school. She pretty much quit school when she was 14. And there was a lot of screaming at home and a lot of objects that would break on a daily basis. But she's the closest person I've ever been to because she's the only one I've been to from birth to the end. And so I had a very interesting relationship with her, one of actual love, but also, man, she was pissing me off. It was really hard to live with her. It was really hard to live with her. It was a lot of suffering for all the family members, actually. But she had the most generous heart I've witnessed so far. Because despite all these troubles, she was always there to help somebody else, and she was always willing to sacrifice herself, and she would punch somebody else for protection. Like she was like, yep, I'm gonna protect you, you know. She was also Krishna conscious. So her conditioning really prevented her to follow any kind of principles whatsoever. It's like no matter how much she tried, she kept being dragged down. And you could tell by knowing her and by talking to her that she was bound up by their conditioning. And she didn't want to be. She really wanted to get out. But no matter what she tried, she would keep falling again. She would meditate, she would preach to her friends, she would bring people to the temple. I remember she would tell me, oh, you know, it doesn't matter like if I die, all I have to do is think about Krishna at the time of death. So she was really innocent in a way. It's like in some ways people would think she was not innocent at all, but she was really innocent. Her heart was really innocent. But she was bound up by this really deep, dark, inconceivable conditioning that she was unable to get out of. And she would tell my dad and myself, like, I wish I was like you, like you're like doing all this like devotional service, and this is how I want to be, but I'm not able to. I keep doing this and that, and she was real. She was really real. So one day I was 17, and I was about to leave my state for another state to study. And at that point, my sister Maya, she had been in and out of our house, and she was like kind of sleeping in the how do you call that, where we watch TV? The living room. She was sleeping there. That was her room. I was a total mess. That's another thing I didn't mention. Like, really messy. But yeah, that's where she was living. But she was in and out. She disappeared in the middle of the night, and at that point, we were so used to it that we would never question her disappearing. And she would sometimes be at my place, at our place, and sometimes be at my mom's, because my parents are not together. And yeah, so that evening I was praying because I had heard from my father that she wanted to move with us to New Brunswick. And so I went to my deities and I was like, please, 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 I don't want her to come. I don't want her to come with us. I cannot do this anymore. I can't sleep at night. I'm stressed every day. I don't want to hear the screaming. I don't want to hear the objects breaking down. I don't want to have to deal with the reactions of her actions and all these things. Like, please don't bring her with us. I can't do this anymore. So the next morning, I woke up and I went to see downstairs in the living room where she was. And I looked in the room, which just, okay, it really is a mess. Like, you got to understand, like, there's like, you cannot see the floor at all. And I'm not exaggerating. You cannot see the floor at all. There's piles of clothes and food and objects and all that stuff. So usually she sleeps in there. So that's how it is. So I look in the room, there's like a curtain. So I open the curtain, I look in the room, I'm like, oh, she's not there. And then I look away and I see her sleeping like in the middle of the piles. I'm like, oh, she's there. Oh no, she's not. So this happens. I'm like, okay, that's weird. I go back to do my own thing and do my breakfast. Meanwhile, my dad is driving from work to the hospital, and he says he saw this vision of a rock, a really like dark black rock cracking into, and the light coming out of it. So he has this vision. And I'm doing my homework because I'm homeschooled. And I received a call from my mom saying that the police found a body on the road, and that the body is wearing a shirt that is similar to a shirt that we've heard of before, and that all the family members should go to the hospital to identify the body. And so I go. The police came to get me, and I went to the hospital, and my mom and dad were there. And we went to the morgue to identify the body, and there was my sister, Maya. this, when I saw it, I didn't see my sister because a body, when the soul is not in the body anymore, is colorless. It has no movement whatsoever and is hard and completely empty. So I sat there and I started chanting. I was like, where are you? Because she was not in there. My mom had her whole thing going on. And my dad was looking at me and he was like, yeah, that's what this is. That's what this is. So he sat with me and he started chanting with me. And that's when I mean, I already knew, but that it was a very graphic image of, we're not this body. We really are not. We really, really are not. Once the soul is gone, there's nothing there. And we don't realize that really, because even when you're not moving, like even when you're sitting straight like this and you're not moving, actually there's movement. And you don't seem to perceive it right now, but once you see something that's really that really is not moving, then you realize, wow, okay, there's nothing there. It's gone. You know? And after that, actually the very same night I was bawling in my room, and I looked up there's a staircase that comes up to my room, and there's no door. So it's kind of just a staircase that goes directly to my room. And my sister used to go in between the bars and make faces, like, just to like make me laugh or whatever. I'm crying, like bawling, like I can't sleep. And I look in between the bars and I see a golden silhouette in the shape of my sister's face doing those weird facial expressions. I'm like, Maya? And then it disappears. I was like, wow, okay, she's here. And of course I continued crying, but it was like, okay, that's interesting. And apparently, according to our culture and the Vedas, the soul, after leaving the body, remains around their family members for a few days. I don't know exactly the time, but for some time. And once that time is over, then they go to get their judgment, basically. So she was there for a few days, and I know that I've experienced seeing her, and my dad has experienced seeing her, and some other people have experienced other like interesting events. And so that was just further confirmation that, oh yeah, not this body, not this body. It's something else happens after death, you know. And also, my sister, like I explained, had a really difficult life. Really, really difficult life and really difficult things to deal with, not only outside of herself, but actually mostly within herself. But after she left, the devotees came all the way 2 hours away from where we were living, and they did kirtan for her cremation. And so devotees were just singing and playing Mitanga at this cremation with all the, the normal people there, like hearing about it and just singing for her. And my dad told me that not only devotees came to her cremation, but there were devotees in Montreal, in USA, in Mayapur, and other places that he couldn't remember, but a few places like all around the world doing kirtans and rituals for her departure. And for me and for my dad, that was confirmation that she was getting the mercy of the devotees and she was getting the mercy of Lord Krishna, despite her really difficult life and really difficult situations, because she was a devotee, because she was sincere. And so as the purport is saying, no one escapes the laws of nature. And I share this story because I think it's more personal and something that is more relatable to than what we read from people that we haven't met and this and that. We will lose this body because it's not us. It's very temporary. And in the same way, all that we identify with, our family members, our gender, our status, our work, or any material attachments that we have, all of that is going to disappear because none of that is you and none of that has any relation with you at all. But there is something that we really are. At the moment, it's covered because we have this illusion version of who we are in our mind that we've, made some type of conception of. But when we engage in this process of bhakti yoga and devotional service through hearing in many different ways. You can hear by reading, you can hear by chanting, you can hear by kirtan, you can hear by hearing someone else. All of these ways, it triggers our soul. It's like a poke that's like, hey, do you remember who you are? Hey, you're not this body. Hey, did you forget? It's like little poke, and then you get a little tiny bit of remembrance, and you're like, I think something's wrong with this world. You're like, I think something's up. I don't think this is normal. And then you start questioning. And as you continue this process of hearing and then get into chanting, and of course, like devotees' mercy, that is actually needed and like extremely important. You get more and more remembrance as you develop your relationship with Krishna. I mean, it's not really that you develop it, actually you kind of just reviving it. And engaging like this, you trigger, actually you trigger remembrance, and then your soul starts questioning, and then whatever you do, Krishna is like, your desire is sparked, let me guide you back to me. And so whatever you do, he's kind of pulling you back to remembering. Why? Because it's your desire, because you're tired of being in this world, and you know that it's temporary, and you know that everything you relate to here is gonna die, and you're never gonna be satisfied with it. And so Krishna is like, let me get you back. And so he pulls you like this through devotional service, and slowly you remember who you are, and you remember who he is, and you start seeing yourself more clearly. I find that when you develop, actually, one of the things I wanted to say is that Krishna really reciprocates with how much you surrender to him. So if you make efforts in your relationship with him, he's gonna have you have all the realizations that you need. So right now you might not know who you are, but as you develop your relationship with Krishna, whatever tiny bit of effort you make is gonna give you something back, and you remember a little bit more. So you realize not only yourself but also Krishna, because we somehow think that Krishna doesn't care, God doesn't care, God like doesn't want our desires to be fulfilled or this and that, like on subtle levels. But he does. He cares, and he wants our desires to be fulfilled, and he loves us, and he supports us all the time, even in the bad times when everything seems to be against us. Actually, he's arranging for our highest good, for us to be happy, for us to be fulfilled. And he takes care of all our needs, our spiritual ones and our material ones, in a way that's actually beneficial for a true self. Okay, I'm supposed to cover another one, but we don't have to. So, any questions or comments?
Thank you very much. I just have a question about one thing in the purport. Can you scroll up? Material affection. It's about material affection. I think it's up. Oh yeah, there it is. But when we are liberated from material affection and are situated in our original spiritual form, what does that mean to be liberated from material affection?
So, my understanding, you can always add, is to a full extent being liberated from material affections wouldn't mean that there's nothing seemingly material in our life, but more so that it no longer has an impact on us because we don't relate to it as part of our identity. Meaning that we found contentment in our relationship with Krishna. And the way that I personally experienced it is not to the full extent, but I find that even to small extents, you do get a clearer perception of who you are and who Krishna is, even if you're not completely free from affections of the material world. If you give something up for Krishna, and by that I mean control, really mostly. Like you go to him when you have an issue or a struggle or a dilemma, and ask him to make the best decisions because you know that you can't, then he reciprocates with that. And in many other ways he reciprocates, even if you just like read for him or do something for a devotee or eat prasadam. So to different extents, through the spiritual practice, we free ourselves from material affections because we become more attached to Krishna than to our false identity. Would you like to say something?
Along with that, how do we? So it's a matter of changing a perspective, consciousness.
I don't think that we can change our own consciousness, but I think that through the practice that we are doing here, naturally our consciousness does elevate. So as we read the scriptures, as we associate with other devotees and serve them and hear them out submissively, not in a like blind following way, but in a like, I'm willing to hear and I'm willing to try. All these little efforts that we make to go towards our spiritual life, I think is rewarded by Krishna and the devotees, and our consciousness really just goes up. I don't think we can control that at all.
There's something.
We can control our actions. We can control where we put our focus. We can control our intention. We can control our efforts.
This statement is not a license to become materially responsible.
Of course not, because that's a material conception, actually. To think that we can just give up on everything. Actually, we should use everything for Krishna. Material things are not material if they're used for Krishna. The duality doesn't exist on the spiritual platform. So whatever is here, whatever is our responsibility, we just use everything for Krishna, and it becomes spiritual. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you for such a heartfelt class. I like what you said about submission, and like I'm willing to hear you out and like try it and apply it, and it just like I just when you said it like that, I realized that submission is not like in the moment as you're listening, but it's as you apply throughout life, and that's what it means to be submissively here. It's like you're actually taking it.
In the verses in this chapter, I think this topic is touched again about material affection, and it's like you can have spiritual affection, especially if there's a family with other devotees. So then that relationship changes, and it's not just based on, what do I get from this person, or that's basically material affection. Like, what do I get from this person? But spiritual affection is like, what can I do for this person so that they can come closer to Krishna? So that, because those relationships will be there. We want to have relationships. I mean, no one's going to be just by themselves on an island. So the question is, how do we have spiritual affection for each other? So, yeah, I was just thinking that, we're liberated from the material affection, that selfishness of what do I get from this person, and like I give so much, but this person doesn't do much for me, and then that changes into how can I serve this person to bring them closer to Krishna. Then actually, people are a lot more peaceful. They have that mindset.
We learn that so can people love us if they haven't become self-realized? Like maybe some of our more material friendships, and relationships with family members, like do they really love us?
Well, the love that they think they have is in relation to the body. The love that they identify as love is really like material attachment. But underneath that, underneath the coverings of the mind and the body and the emotional body and all these things, the soul is still there. And the soul loves you. And the soul loves Krishna. And so, of course, your family member do love you. They just don't really understand what the love really is, because what they identify as the love is actually their material attachment.
The love is spirit soul, like light that goes to a prism. You know what prism is? PRISM. Anyways, ours goes to like a color tinted glass for the layman. And it just changes color, it's like becomes something else. But that, as you to your point, that original love is there. But it's just kind of, yes, was it covered? Yeah, or it goes to say a broken glass, then it comes out a little different. So
I mean, and to be fair, like we're putting people who are not practicing in a box, but we're the same. We also don't know what it is to really love, because we're still covered to some extent. We're learning to become ourselves again. We are neither renouncer nor enjoyer. We are simply servitor of Krishna. Please follow this principle, and you will be never disturbed in any frightened condition offered by the Maya. Yeah, that's remembering our original nature of servitors. Okay.
It's amazing how in Krishna consciousness, like every single day, we're constantly reminding ourselves the same fact in different ways. Like all these different routes of receiving the same knowledge of it, we're constantly forgetting. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Right.